Let's be honest, we're not going to get to Robinhood scale with everyone managing their seed phrase and knowing all the technical details of every, which wallet and even which chain they want to use.
People just take it for granted today that if you want to use an app on another chain, you have to first bridge tokens to that chain, right? And sometimes you have to bridge more than one tokens because again, you have to bridge both the gas token and the token you actually want to spend.
When you're thinking about building for the next wave, how does your approach change? Does it go from the 10% to the 90%?
How will I feel this from a user perspective? What is the timeline for me to feel this? How do you guys, what is the vision for the end users to feel this?
Welcome back to the Rollup. We are your hosts. I'm Andy.
I'm Robbie, and this is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Steven, Derek, pleasure to see you guys. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Nice to meet you, Andy and Robbie.
Welcome, guys. Steven, good to have you back. Derek, welcome to the show. And guys, congrats on the acquisition and all of the success so far. You guys get a big confetti burst, and we're gonna get into it. There's a lot of M&A happening, not just in the crypto markets, but in the industry in general. And so maybe we'll cover a little bit about what's happening on the timeline now. But before we do, guys, would love to hear how this went down and why it went down. Steven, maybe you could start and tell us a little bit about what you saw in Derek, in ZeroDev, and why it was such a great fit to bring that into the Arbitrum family.
Absolutely. There are two ways that I think about what we do here at Offchain Labs. One way is viewing the people, and we are the most talented technical and non-technical people in the space. Really an incredible group of people, amazing minds. And what we try to do is really work with the absolute best. And there's no question when you look at that lens, Derek and team, really not only fit well with the team, but also extend our capabilities and are super smart, super talented, but also bring a wealth of experience in areas that, we are only venturing into now. So that's like one viewpoint. But the second one, Offchain Labs is interesting as a scaling company, at least primarily as our first, endeavor. And the thing is, if you look at all of our competitors, they're kind of built scaling into their name and built sometimes even the word optimistic or the word ZK or Snark or Stark, right? Very, very focused on one mission. And Offchain Labs is kind of a little bit more generic in its naming, and it's not accidental because I never thought of ourselves as, hey, we're the company that's going to scale Ethereum. I thought of ourselves as, hey, we're the company that's going to solve the hardest problems facing Ethereum and more broadly facing the adoption of blockchain systems today. If you rewind, 7 or 8 years ago, that problem was scaling. And I think we contributed heavily to that, but we as an ecosystem have largely solved that. But what happens is, we're never done. Like, when's the last EIP? Never. When's the last, AIP? Never, right? What happens is you solve one problem, and then what was previously the second largest problem is now your biggest problem, and you have to solve that as well. And that's how I think of it. If you look at Offchain Labs, we started off, at layer 2, right, at the Rollup scaling layer. With our Prism acquisition a few years ago, we moved down to layer 1 and said, okay, hey, we need to build these things together. We need to solve things like, blob space and data availability in Ethereum. And we wanted to contribute heavily to that and just to Ethereum development. And now we're actually moving up in the stack and saying, okay, we've solved, this problem, but now, first of all, the second problem is larger, but also we've created some problems of fragmentation. Right now, there's all these, which I don't think is the largest problem in the world, but the idea is that we have to solve that. And so naturally, you're seeing us expand above the, higher up in the stack to integrate these things and build them together, but also to really tackle some of the hardest problems. Derek and team are the foremost experts and pioneers when it comes to smart accounts and the things that you can do from a UX perspective, from an interop perspective, both within the chain UX, but also different chains together are really, I think, incredible today. But we're only scratching the surface. And naturally, as we don't just focus on one part of the stack, but build these things together, I think we can ultimately do so much more. Right? If Derek's sitting in his own company and I'm sitting in my company, and we're not coordinating, then there might be features that we could build together that are ultimately going to not connect as well. But as we build the entire stack together, I think ultimately it's going to be better for users, for Arbitrum users, for Ethereum users, and for crypto users generally.
Introducing Extended exclusively on Starknet, a next-gen perps trading platform live today. With 50+ trading pairs from crypto to TradFi, you get the best experience on-chain today. Deposit in the community vault for attractive returns, EMV compatible, and engage in unified margin, spot trading, lending, and perps trading. Exclusively live at extended.app on Starknet today. Derek, when I think about some of the largest issues that we face on chain, you think about having multiple USDC balances across different chains. You think about the approve function on EVM based chains when you do transactions. So basically 2 signatures or 2 ledger taps. You think about gas fees. As you guys have pioneered smart accounts, bringing them into Offchain labs, what is your focus on, these problems or other kind of user experience improvements that you aim to bring here to Offchain labs, as well as the broader ecosystem at large? How are you going to help the end users, the developers, to kind of help make this a more unified experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy. So I think to Steven's point, I think one thing that people don't realize about UX is that when it comes to Web3, UX is not something you can solve at a single layer, right? So for example, if you think about the problems you mentioned, the issues with the fragmented balances, the issues with, for example, just really slow cross-chain transactions, the issues with, for example, gas fees and whatnot, those things that actually require fundamental support, not just at the wallet layer, but at every layer of the stack, such as the solvers, such as the chain itself. So ZeroDev, as a company, we have been focusing singularly on the smart account layer, right? And I think it's fair to say that we have become one of the most successful solutions in that layer. But before I started talking with Steven and Offchain Labs, I think we really started to feel the limits of how much we can do by just innovating at that layer alone, right? So this is why when I connected with Steven, we really, I think resonated on that vision of solving Web3 UX through one single unifying stack, right? So at Offchain Labs, my biggest mission is to really innovate not just at the wallet layer, but really across the stack and think about UX holistically, and essentially just drive updates from every layer of the stack, the chain layer, the intents layer, the solver layer, the bridging, the wallet UX, the smart accounts. And by doing so, I think that we have the opportunity to offer the most compelling UX solutions, to the most valuable companies in the world.
Yeah, I think to put it more kind of tangibly for our audience, for the users of Arbitrum or Orbit chains or just EVM L2s in our community, how do you guys foresee this collaboration, this acquisition, this merger to directly impact my experience using Arbitrum 1 or using an Orbit chain or using an L2? How will I feel this from a user perspective? What is the timeline for me to feel this? What is the vision for the end users to feel this? Or, on the contrary, for developers to feel this? How does that timeline look?
So I think really tangibly, right? So I think you can expect, first of all, cheaper transactions. Secondly, you can expect that a lot of the complexities around transactions will be abstracted away, such as gas fees, right? Very soon, when you use most of the applications that you use, you won't really either you won't really be paying for gas, or you'll be paying for gas in the token that you are already using. Meaning that, for example, if you are trying to, if you are trying to use USDC to buy an NFT, you won't have to own both USDC and ETH, right? You can just do a USDC transaction, and the gas fee will just be taken out of the USDC, right? So that general category is what we call gas abstraction, right? And then the second thing is that you will find cross-chain transactions to be way more seamless than before, right? Because right now, people just take it for granted today that if you want to use an app on another chain, you have to first bridge tokens to that chain, right? And sometimes you have to bridge more than one tokens because, again, you have to bridge both the gas token and the token you actually want to spend, right? So very soon, all the EVM chains at the very least, but we even have the idea to expand that to non-EVM chains. But basically, like all the chains will feel like one unifying chain, right? Like you can, like if you're on USDC, you're on USDC, right? It doesn't matter if you're on Arbitrum or on some other chain. You can spend USDC wherever you want, right? So that's at the intop layer. Secondly, like just and then like just on the wallet's authentication layer, very soon, like managing seed phrases will be like a thing of the past, right? Like it would be super commonplace for people to manage their wallets through things like social, things like phone numbers, email, passkeys, and the really important thing is that we can achieve that without sacrificing security, meaning that like you can literally set up like recovery/guardian setups that are as advanced as you need, right? So for example, like a large, like the users of a large banking application might set up like their safe, like some or some other multisig as a way to recover their bank wallets, whereas like the user of a consumer app might just be using like their Google to log in, right? So like so we are also implementing authentication/recovery in like a very granular way, such that it's gonna fit all types of applications, right? So because it's not good enough to just be to make what is easy. It also has to be secure, right? So we're really trying to essentially achieve both ease of use and security when it comes to the wallet UX. Yeah. So those are some of the top examples.
Steven, you have this saying that I'm blanking on that this is just hitting on. It's like Derek's he's your chain, your rules.
Yes.
Derek is saying your chain, your rules right now.
Absolutely. And by the way, one of the things which I think is important, that Derek mentioned is with ZeroDev, the existing projects, and actually also more broadly, we're not only thinking about the Arbitrum ecosystem. I like to give this other example is in my town, there are 2 pizza shops. They hate each other, but I like both of them. Right. And like, I'm not in any, like, I don't believe that users or even developers, want to limit their interop or limit their user experience to the set of chains that also made the same technical decision as they did, right? Maybe like to orbit chains, right? Like I think your average user is going to want to cross these boundaries all the time, whether it's using an orbit chain and also using Base, or also using an OP chain, or also using, dare I say, Solana, right? The idea is that, and our goal is actually to create a unified experience, certainly for all Arbitrum chains, certainly for all Ethereum chains, and even more chains, more broadly. So we're viewing this as really a way to create, better UX for the entire crypto ecosystem. And there's already so much that you can do. To Derek's point, if I'm a user on, say, Arbitrum One, and I have USDC, and I want to buy, say, an NFT on Ape chain, and the gas there is an ape, there's just a lot of steps in this process. And if you're a savvy user, you'll know, okay, I can use a cross for this or layer 0 for this, and I can do it. You can figure out the steps, right? There's ways, there's tooling to help that, but ultimately it's at the UX layer that a lot of this just doesn't exist today, and it's complicated. So if you're not a savvy user, you'll just look at this and say, I don't even know what to do. I don't know how to get those assets there. And there's really no reason that we can't simplify this. I think this is actually a mistake we make sometimes in the Ethereum community. And I come from a research background, so I'm comfortable saying this because I put myself included. Sometimes we look at things more from a research perspective and think, okay, all we need to do is get the smartest people in a room for a couple of hours and get a whiteboard, and we'll build a protocol that solves interop or solves fragmentation. But the reality is, I would say that 10% is the deep protocol. 90% is the work that Derek and team are doing, and we'll be doing more of, is actually packaging this up for smart wallets and smart accounts, packaging this up and delivering it to users in ways that they can actually use this. And over time, we'll improve that 10%. So we'll swap out some of the underlying infrastructure as, we have better intent protocols or better other protocols to actually fill some of these needs. But there's already so much that we can do today, but it lies today in the realms of different tools that you need to be savvy to know how to use. What we intend to do is package this up for users and give you these abstracted experiences that you don't actually need to worry about these details or be in the know of exactly what tool to use for what the specific workflow that you want to do today.
This is a very forward-thinking approach. Steven, you mentioned thinking about what is the 90%, right? And I think this is increasingly more and more important as we're starting to onboard the next wave, who may not be as crypto native as some of us as power users or early entrants that were, farming and DeFi and all these things back in 2020. Congrats again, your partnership with Robinhood. They're bringing in all of their distribution channel and now putting a lot of that on chain and on Arbitrum. And so Derek mentioned custody, self-custody with passkeys. This is convenient, but also secure. When you're thinking about building for the next wave, how does your approach change? Does it go from the 10% to the 90% when you're building for people that were in crypto and DeFi protocols very early on, and now we're just used to these more consumer-facing financial applications? Does your approach to what you're building and what you're focusing on change more to that 90%? Generally, how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, the way I think about it is, the fundamentals cannot change and shouldn't change, right? So we're not going to make things less secure. And for the power users that want to know the specific details and all the technical details and want to manage their seed phrases, for example, that experience isn't going to go anywhere. A good analogy is gaming. Back in 2018, blockchain gaming, the games were pretty terrible. And the reason is the only people excited to play these games were Ethereum people that were excited about Ethereum. And it's like, oh, cool, I can now play a game on Ethereum. And that was their goal. It wasn't these games weren't trying to appeal to mainstream gamers. Today, we see actually really, really good games, being built on chain. And there are still benefits of building those on the blockchain. But as a prerequisite, in order to build these for a broader audience, what you have to do is make all that stuff added, but optional to go into the details, right? So you don't need to actually set up your MetaMask to play the game. But hey, if you want to take self-custody of your assets, that's an option that's available. So I think it's actually solving these two together. It's giving an excellent UX to users, and also giving optionality for users to go more deeply if they want to. But for those users that don't want to or can't, because let's be honest, we're not going to get to Robinhood scale with everyone managing their seed phrase and knowing all the technical details of every, which wallet and even which chain they want to use. I give this other example, which is, imagine you go to YouTube and you have you want to watch a video, and you get this pop-up that says, hey, would you like to watch your video today on AWS, Amazon servers, or GCP, Google servers? And you as a user are just like, I don't know what that means. I really just want to watch my video. And I think today there is this ultra focus on backend infrastructure. And maybe it's ironic for me to say it because, I represent some of that backend infrastructure. But I'm also realistic that in order for that backend infrastructure to succeed and get past the point of the saturated crypto insider market, as you will, those who, as you said, were around and know how to, use the blockchain, intimately, we actually need to build abstracted experiences that attract others as well. And hey, if they want to go deeper, it's absolutely available for them. But the key is, and this is what Derek said, we have to give them an experience that doesn't sacrifice their security, right? So we have to build good UX around what we're building in ways that it's accessible, but still doesn't sacrifice their security. If they just want to stop there and say, hey, I don't actually want to go deeper and dive into the technical bits of the exact transaction hash detail level of what I'm doing.
Yeah, and to maybe give another example to what Steven was saying, right? So just recently, maybe last week, we launched a three-way collaboration between 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵, OCL, and ZeroDev. Right, so we ZeroDev is powering the passkey logging for the Gemini for the new Gemini wallet. So that's a great example of a very easy logging method that anyone with access to Face ID to iPhone can use. But it's actually also fundamentally secure in the sense that there's no middleman sitting between the user and the blockchain, right? Because we came up with a technology that essentially allows the user, they essentially allow the blockchain to directly verify passkey logins through smart contracts. And that's also another, by the way, a great example of something that's only possible because of the chain level innovation, right? Because during that flow, the very reason why the blockchain is able to verify passkeys efficiently is because Arbitrum actually implemented this new roll-up improvement technology that allows the blockchain itself to validate passkey signatures in a very gas-efficient way, right? So that's a great example of a very easy logging that's entirely non-custodial, super secure, and yet it's also only enabled because of innovation at both the wallets and the chain level.
Could you maybe just elaborate a bit on the verification process? I'm just super curious.
Yeah,
you can get as technical as you like. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So basically, like up until recently, right? Like the EVM can only verify a few signature types, right? So like the when you hear terms like ECDSA, so that's like the signature algorithm that the EVM is able to run. So Arbitrum is one of the first rollups to implement a support for a different signature algorithm, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗵-𝗵-𝗵-6, that is also the algorithm that powers passkeys. So it just means that the signatures generated by your passkey devices, such as your iPhone, can now be validated natively inside the EVM, as opposed to a much less gas efficient approach, which is to implement that verification algorithm through smart contracts. Because before this Arbitrum updates, it was also possible to validate passkey signatures on chain. It was just really expensive. Like validating a single signature would cost like more than $1 million in gas, which translates to maybe like $10, right? So obviously like no one's gonna send like a $10 transaction just to validate a signature, right? But after these updates, it only costs a few thousands in gas, which translates to maybe like 1 cent, right? So there's like literally a thousandfold improvements that's made it possible for the first time for users to use a consumer device to manage their wallets fully on chain in a fully non-custodial way without any middleman.
Thanks for the explanation, Derek. Guys, we only got a few minutes left before we have to let you go. I'd like to quickly zoom out and speak about crypto M&A in general and how this process went down. We were talking a little bit earlier on the stream about the back and forth that Layer 0 and Wormhole are having in acquiring Stargate. And I'm just curious, maybe there's a piece of advice. Your process seemed to go so smoothly. What would you guys recommend to Layer 0, Wormhole, and Stargate when they're going through this M&A process?
From my perspective, it all comes down to alignment of vision, alignment of people, and working with people you want to, and everything else follows from there. You can have two fantastic products, but if the people aren't going to get along and don't have a shared vision, like ultimately it's not going to work out. And on the other hand, you can have two teams that might be vastly different, but if they're aligned on a vision and what they can accomplish together and excited about that, which as Derek said before, I think we had very early on, from the first meeting, Derek, I don't want to speak for Derek, but he wrote recently in his blog post that they've had many acquisition offers in the past, but ultimately kind of, when there's chemistry and you're excited and something's going to work together. And I think that's what we had from the very beginning. And, obviously these processes take long. There's legal diligence. There's a lot that goes into them. But ultimately, if everyone's rowing in the same direction and aligned, things tend to work out. We had that with Prism. We had that with ZeroDev. And so we're 2 for 2 in our case. At least that's from the Offchain Labs perspective.
And Derek, from the founder's perspective, then, like, is this what you thought that you were going to do when you created ZeroDev? I think in crypto, the question is like launch a token, sell out, build, reach product market fit, profitability, et cetera. There's different kind of venues, or they kind of come together. What was this? What you expected? What was your experience?
I think I expected to revolutionize Web3 UX when I started ZeroDev, and I really think that Offchain Labs will amplify that ambition, right? So I think my advice to other crypto founders that might be looking to be acquired would be that join a company that you will actually be excited working at, right? Because I think when you are getting acquired, there are many different things you can optimize for, right? You can obviously optimize for profits, just like how much money you're personally getting, and that's certainly certainly very important. But I think ultimately, I think when we decided to join Offchain Labs, we are trying to make ZeroDev 100x better, right? That's what I'm saying to all our customers right now, which is that with the backing of Offchain Labs, ZeroDev will be 100x better. So I feel like, my advice to crypto founders is just to, if you love your product, join a company that will actually make your products 100x better. And it's very hard to find an acquirer like that, but when you do, I think you will know it.
It's got to make you feel good there, Steven. Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and congratulations on the collaboration. I look forward to it. And I as on-chain users of some time, even small things like shifting from MetaMask to 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗵 was a big step.
small things to using passkeys on Infinex, using Face ID, things that Privy brought, things that ZeroDev, like it's just really been fun to be a part of it and see it grow. And I just keep looking forward to using more and more of these innovations that teams like yourselves bring to market, and make it better for all of us. So genuinely appreciate your efforts in making all of our financial experiences, which are now, crypto is no longer plan B for a lot of us. It is very much plan A. And so we appreciate all the efforts.
Thank you so much for having us on, and likewise, definitely more of that to come from us together.
Thank you, Andy.
Awesome.
Thank you, Andy and Robbie, for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cheers, guys.
See you guys again soon. Congrats.
Best of luck.
Bye.